hope you're all well tonight. Tonight is going to be just a relaxing night where we're going to have a little read. Oh, one moment. Let's change all that a bit. There we go. What about now? There we go. A little bit better. Tonight we're doing something a little weird, a little interesting even. Oh wait, hang on a second. I think I've messed up something a little bit. Oh frickums. Ah yes, I did mess up something. One moment. I decided to do a tweet for this stream. This is the last... It is the last Winnie the Pooh stream, probably. Or quite a bit, at least. By the way, if anyone's interested, this is just a simple jazz mix I've found, which is currently live streaming on YouTube. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, though, all. Welcome to the show tonight. Oh, God. Tonight is where we're going to do some Winnie the Pooh reading. It's cold outside, so let's just have a nice, comfy night in. Just chilling back, relaxing, all cool, shooting some b-ball outside of the school, when a couple of guys who were up to no good starting making trouble in the neighborhood. I got in one little fight, and my mother got scared. She said, "You're moving with your auntie and uncle in Bel Air." I appear to have sent a strange message on Discord. I'm not quite sure who it's from, nor why. I'm very confused. Who is this man? Who are you? Answer me, knave. Interesting. Very interesting. Well, never mind. We shall find out in a short while, after we're done with the stream. Oh, one moment. I just need to check something as well. There we go. Oh, hang on, actually. One moment. 1 second, Roo. Sorry about that, I had to double check some things. Oh god, a bit loud. That's okay, no worries. Right. Well, we've been waiting a few minutes now. I say, we get on with the show. If people want to come in when they do, they can do. For now, we shall read. Wait, actually, one moment. There, now we shall read. The scene's all set, the stage is set, as it were. Makes more sense, as we are in a theatre, so... I have my big hardback copy of the book right here. Let me just flip to the right page-a-roo. So, if anyone remembers, last time we were on the story called Where Tigger is Unbounced. And that was a very, very humbling story for Rabbit. But yeah, shall I get on with that then? Well, no, rather, not with that one, with this next one. This is Chapter 8, in which Piglet does a very grand thing. Halfway between Pooh's house and Piglet's house was a thought... Actually, tell you what, I'll turn the sound down on the music just a little bit, just so it's not super distracting. Just a little bit of background noise is nice as well. Halfway between Pooh's house and Piglet's house was a thoughtful spot, where they met sometimes when they had decided to go and see each other, and it was warm and out of the wind. And as it was warm out of the wind, they would sit down there for a little and wonder what they would do now that they had seen each other. One day, they decided not to do anything. Pooh made up a verse about it, so that everybody should know what the place was for. This warm and sunny spot belongs to Pooh, and here he wonders what he's going to do. Oh, bother, I forgot. It's Piglet, too. Now, one autumn morning, when the wind had blown all the leaves off the trees in the night, and was trying to blow the branches off, Pooh and Piglet were sitting in the thoughtful spot, and wondering. What I think, said Pooh, is that I think we'll go to Pooh Corner and see Eeyore. Because perhaps his house has been blown down, and perhaps he'd like us to build it again. Pooh's very thoughtful. What I think, said Piglet, is I think we'll go and see Christopher Robin, only he won't be there, so we can't. Let's go and see everybody, said Pooh, because when you've been walking in the wind for miles, and you suddenly go into somebody's house, and he says, Oh, hello, Pooh. You're just in time for a little smackerel of something, and you are, well then that's what I call a friendly day. Piglet thought that they ought to have a reason for going to see everybody, like looking for small or organizing an expedition, if Pooh could think of something. Pooh could. We'll go because it's Thursday, he said, and we'll go wish everybody a very happy Thursday. Come on, Piglet. They got up, and when Piglet had sat down again because he didn't know the wind was so strong, and had been helped up by Pooh, they started off. They went to Pooh's house first, and luckily, Pooh was home just as they got there. So he asked them in, and they had some. And they went on to Kanga's house, holding on to each other and shouting, "Isn't it?" and "What?" and "I can't hear." By the time they got to Kanga's house, they were so buffeted that they stayed to lunch. Just at first, it seemed rather cold outside afterwards, so they pushed on to Rabbit as quickly as they could. "We've come to wish you a very happy Thursday," said Pooh, when he had gone in and out once or twice just to make sure that he could get out again. "Why, what's going to happen on Thursday?" asked Rabbit, and when Pooh had explained, and Rabbit, whose life was made up of important things, said, "Oh, I thought it'd really come about something." They sat down for a little, and by, Pooh and Piglet went on again. The wind was behind them now, and so they didn't have to shout. "Rabbit's clever," said Pooh thoughtfully. "Yes," said Piglet, "Rabbit's clever." "And he has brain." "Yes," said Piglet. "Rabbit has brain." There was a long silence. "I suppose," said Pooh, "that's why he never understands anything." Christopher Robin was at home by this time, because it was the afternoon, and he was so glad to see them that they stayed there until very nearly tea time. And then they had a very nearly tea, which is one you forget about afterwards, and hurried on to Pooh Corner, so as to see Eeyore before it was too late to have a proper tea with Owl. "Hello, Eeyore," they called out cheerfully. Said Eeyore. "Lost your way?" "We just came to see you," said Piglet, "and to see how your house was. Look, Pooh, it's still standing." "I know," said Eeyore. "Very odd. Somebody ought to have come down and pushed it over." "We wondered whether the wind would blow it down," said Pooh. That's why nobody's bothered, I suppose. I thought perhaps they'd forgotten." "Well, we're very glad to see you, Eeyore, and now we're going on to see Owl." "That's right, you'll like Owl. He flew past a day or two ago and noticed me. He didn't actually say anything, mind you, but he knew it was me. Very friendly of him, I thought. Encouraging." Pooh and Piglet shuffled about a little and said,
"Well, goodbye, Eeyore,"
as lingeringly as they could, but they had a long way to go and wanted to be getting on.
"Goodbye," said Eeyore. "Mind you don't get blown away, little Piglet. You'd be missed. People would say, 'Where's little Piglet been blown to?' Really wanting to know. Well, goodbye, and thank you for happening to pass me."
"Goodbye," said Pooh and Piglet for the last time, and they pushed on to Owl's house. The wind was against them now, and Piglet's ears streamed behind him, like banners, as he fought his way along, and it seemed hours before he got them into the shelter of the 100-acre wood, and they stood up straight again to listen, a little nervously, to the roaring of the gale among the treetops.
"Supposing a tree fell down."
"Oh, that's wrong character. Supposing a tree fell down, Pooh, when we were underneath it?"
"Supposing it didn't,"
said Pooh after careful thought. Piglet was comforted by this, and in a little while they were knocking and ringing very cheerfully at Owl's door.
"Hello, Owl," said Pooh. "I hope we're not too late for I mean, how are you, Owl? Piglet and I just came to see how you were because it's Thursday.
Oh, sit down, Pooh. Sit down, Piglet, said Owl kindly. Make yourselves comfortable. They thanked him and made themselves as comfortable as they could.
Because you see, Owl, we've been hurrying so as to be in time so as to see you before we went away again.
Owl nodded solemnly. Correct me if I'm wrong, he said, but am I right in supposing that it is a very blusterous day outside? Very, said Piglet, who was quietly thawing his ears and wishing that he was safely back in his own house. I thought so. It was on just such a blusterous day as this that my Uncle Robert, a portrait of whom you see upon the wall on your right... Oh, right. On your right, Piglet, while returning in the late forenoon from a... What's that? There was a loud cracking noise.
Oh, look out! Cried Pooh. Mind the clock! Out of the way, Piglet! Piglet, I'm falling on you!
Help! Cried Piglet. Pooh's side of the room was slowly tilting upwards, and his chair began sliding down on Piglet's. The clock slithered gently down along the mantelpiece, collecting vases on the way, until they all crashed together onto what had once been the floor, but was now trying to see what it looked like as a wall. Uncle Robert, who was going to be the new hearthrug, and was bringing the rest of his wall with him as a carpet, met Piglet's chair just as Piglet was expecting to leave it. For a little while it became very difficult to remember which way was really the north. Then there was another loud crack. Owl's room collected itself feverishly, and there was silence. In a corner of the room, the tablecloth began to wriggle. Then, it wrapped itself into a ball and rolled across the room. Then it jumped up and down, once or twice, and put out 2 ears. It rolled across the room again, and unwound itself. "Pooh," said Piglet nervously.
"Yes," said one of the chairs.
"Where are we?"
I'm not quite sure," said the chair.
Are we in Owl's house?"
"Oh, I think so, because we were just going to have tea, and we hadn't had it."
"Oh," said Piglet. "Well, did Owl always have a letterbox in his ceiling?"
"Oh, has he?"
"Yes, look."
"Oh, I can't,"
said Pooh. Oh, almost lost the page there.
"I can't," said Pooh. "I'm face downwards under something, and that, Piglet, is a very bad position for looking at ceilings."
"Well, he has, Pooh."
"Oh, perhaps he's changed it," said Pooh. "Just for a change."
There was a disturbance behind the table, in the other corner of the room, and Owl was with them again. "Ah, Piglet," said Owl, looking very much annoyed. "Where's Pooh?" "I'm not quite sure," said Pooh. Owl turned at his voice and frowned as much of... Oh, that's the wrong voice.
"Oh, I'm not quite sure," said Pooh.
Owl turned at his voice and frowned at as much of Pooh as he could see. Oh. "Pooh," said Owl severely, "did you do that?"
"No," said Pooh humbly. "I don't think so."
"Then who did?"
"Oh, I think it was the wind,"
said Piglet. "I think your house was blown down." "Oh, is that it?" Oh, I'm getting the voice all mixed up.
"Oh, is that it? I thought it was."
"Oh, wait, no, I'm going... Blah, blah. "Oh, is that it? I thought it was Pooh."
No," said Pooh.
"Oh, if it was the wind," said Owl, considering the matter, "then it wasn't Pooh's fault. No blame can be attached to him." With these kind words, he flew up to look at his new ceiling.
"Piglet!"
called Pooh in a loud whisper. Piglet leant down to him. "Yes, Pooh."
"What did he say? He was attached to me?"
"He said he didn't blame you."
Oh, I thought he meant... Oh, I see.
Lost where I was. Owl, said Piglet, come down and help Pooh. Owl, who was admiring his letterbox, flew down again. Together they pushed and pulled at the armchair, and in a little while, Pooh came out from underneath, and was able to look around him again. Well, said Owl, this is a nice state of things. What are we going to do, Pooh? Can you think of anything? Asked Piglet.
Well, I had just thought of something,
said Pooh.
It was just a little thing I thought of, and he began to sing. I lay on my chest and thought it best to pretend I was having an evening rest. I lay on my tum, and I tried to hum, but nothing particular seemed to come. My face was flat on the floor, and that is all very well for an acrobat, but it doesn't seem fair to a friendly bear to stiffen him out with a basket chair. And a sort of squoze, which grows, and a sort of squoze, which grows and grows, is not too nice for his poor old nose, and a sort of squatch is much too much for his neck and his mouth and his ears and such. That was all, said Pooh.
Owl coughed in an unadmiring sort of way, and said that if Pooh was sure that was all, they could now give their minds to the problem of escape. Because, said Owl, we can't go out by what used to be the front. Something's fallen on it. But how else can you get out? Oh, but how else can you go out? Asked Piglet anxiously. That is the problem, Piglet, to which I am asking Pooh to give his mind. Pooh sat on the floor, which had once been a wall, and gazed up at the ceiling, which had once been another wall, with a front door in it, which had once been a front door, and tried to give his mind to it.
Could you fly up there to the letterbox with Piglet on your back? He asked.
No, said Piglet quickly. He couldn't. Owl explained about the necessary dorsal muscles. He had explained this to Pooh and Christopher Robin once before, and he had been waiting ever since for a chance to do it again, because it is a thing which you can easily explain twice before anybody knows what you are talking about. Because you see,
Owl, if we could get Piglet into that letterbox, he might squeeze through the place where the letter comes, and climb down the tree and run for help.
Piglet said hurriedly that he had been getting bigger lately, and couldn't possibly, much as he would like to, and Owl said he had his letterbox made bigger lately in case he had got bigger letters, so perhaps Piglet might. And Piglet said, but you said the necessary you-know-whats wouldn't, and Owl said, no, they won't. So it's no good thinking about it. And Piglet said, then we'd better think of something else. And Piglet began to at once. But Pooh's mind had gone back to the day when he had saved Piglet from the flood, and everybody had admired him so much, and as that didn't often happen, he thought he would like it to happen again. And suddenly, just as it had come before, an idea came to him.
Owl, said Pooh, I have thought of something.
Astute and helpful bear, said Owl. Pooh looked proudly at being called a stout and helpful bear, and said modestly that he had just happened to think of it. You tied a piece of string to Piglet, and you flew up to the letterbox with the other end in your beak, and you pushed it through the wire and brought it down to the floor. And you and Pooh pulled hard at this end, and Piglet went slowly to the other end, and there you were. And there Piglet is, said Owl. If the string doesn't break. Supposing it does, asked Piglet, really wanting to know. Oh, then we try another piece of string. This was not very comforting to Piglet, because however many pieces of string they tried pulling up with, it would always be the same hymn coming down. But still, it did seem the only thing to do. So, with one last look back in his mind at all the happy hours he'd spent in the forest, not being pulled up to the ceiling by a piece of string, Piglet nodded bravely at Pooh and said that It was a very clever plan.
It won't break, whispered Pooh comfortingly, because you're a small animal, and I'll stand underneath, and if you save us all, it will be a very grand thing to talk about afterwards. And perhaps I'll make up a song. And people will say, it was so grand what Piglet did that a respectful Pooh song was made about it.
Piglet felt much better after this, when everything was ready, and he found himself slowly going up to the ceiling. He was so proud that he would have called out, "Look at me!" if he hadn't been afraid that Pooh and Owl would let go of their end of the string and look at him.
Up we go, said Pooh cheerfully.
The ascent is proceeding as expected, said Owl helpfully. Soon it was over. Piglet opened the letterbox and climbed in. Then, having untied himself, he began to squeeze into the slit, through which, in the old days when front doors were front doors, many an unexpected letter that WOL had written to himself had come slipping. He squeezed and he squoze, and then, with one last squiz, he was out. Happy and excited, he turned round to squeak a last message to the prisoners. "It's all right," he called through the letterbox. "Your tree is blown over, Owl, and there's a branch across the door, but Christopher Robin and I can move it, and we'll bring a rope for Pooh, and I'll go and tell him now, and I can climb down quite easily. I mean, it's dangerous, but I can do it all right, and Christopher Robin and I will be back in about half an hour. Goodbye, Pooh." And without waiting to hear Pooh's answering goodbye and thank you, Piglet, he was off. "Half an hour," said Owl, settling himself comfortably. "This will just give me time to finish that story I was telling you about my Uncle Robert, a portrait of whom you see underneath you. Now, let me see where I was. Oh, yes, it was on just such a blusterous day as this. My Uncle Robert..." Pooh closed his eyes. And that's the end of the story, actually. That was Piglet's brave thing he did. I think we just move on right to the next one, actually. I'm just going to get a drink of water first. Chapter 9, in which Eeyore finds the Woolery, and Owl moves into it. Pooh had wandered into the 100-acre wood, and was standing in front of what had once been Owl's house. It didn't look at all like a house now. It looked like a tree, which had been blown down, and as soon as a house looks like that, it is time you tried to find another one. Pooh had had a mysterious message underneath his front door that morning, saying, "I am searching for a new house for Owl, so had you Rabbit." And while he was wondering what it meant, Rabbit had come in and read it for him. I'm leaving one for all the others," said Rabbit, "and telling them what it means, and they'll all search too. I'm in a hurry, goodbye." And he had run off. Pooh followed slowly. He had something better to do than find a new house for Owl. He had to make up a Pooh song about the old one. God, Pooh. About the old one, because he had promised Piglet days and days ago that he would, and whenever he and Piglet had met since, Piglet didn't actually say anything, but you knew at once why he didn't. And if anybody mentioned hums or trees, or string or storms of the night, Piglet's nose went all pink at the tip, and he talked about something quite different in a hurried sort of way. "But it isn't easy," said Pooh to himself, as he looked at what had once been Owl's house. "Because poetry and hums aren't things which you get, they're things which get you. And all you can do is go where they can find you." He waited hopefully. "Well, said Pooh after a long wait.
I shall begin, here lies a tree, because it does, and then I'll see what happens.
This is what happened.
Here lies a tree which Owl, a bird, was fond of when it stood on end, and Owl was talking to a friend, called me, in case you hadn't heard, when something, occurred. For lo, the wind was blusterous, and flattened out his favourite tree, and things looked bad for him and we. Looked bad, I mean, for he and us. I have never known them worse. Then Piglet thought a thing.
Courage, he said. There's always hope. I want a thinnish piece of rope. Or if there isn't any, bring a thickish piece of string.
So to the letterbox he rose, while Pooh and Owl said "Oh" and "hum," and with the letters always come, called letters only, Piglet goes, his head and then his toes. Oh, gallant Piglet, Piglet, ho! Did Piglet tremble? Did he blinch? No, no, he struggled inch by inch, through letters only, as I know, because I saw him go. He ran, and then he stood, and shouted, "Help for Owl, a bird, and Pooh, a bear," until he heard the others coming through the wood, as quickly as they could. "Help, help, and rescue!" Piglet cried, and showed the others where to go. "Sing ho for Piglet! Piglet, ho!" And soon the door was opened wide, and we were both outside. Sing ho for Piglet, ho!
So there it is, said Pooh, when he had sung this to himself 3 times.
It's come different from what I thought it would, but it's come. Now I must go and sing it to Piglet.
I am searching for a new house for Owl. So had you, Rabbit.
What's all this? Said Eeyore.
Rabbit explained.
What's the matter with his old house?
Rabbit explained.
Nobody tells me, said Eeyore. Nobody keeps me informed. I make it 17 days come Friday since anybody spoke to me.
It certainly isn't 17 days
come Friday, explained Eeyore.
And today's Saturday, said Rabbit, so that would make it 11 days. And I was here myself a week ago.
Not conversing, said Eeyore.
Oh, why did I just do that?
Not conversing, said Eeyore. Not first one and then the other, you said hello and flashed past. I saw your tail 100 yards up the hill as I was meditating my reply. I had thought of saying, what? But of course it was then too late.
Well, I was in a hurry.
No give and take, Eeyore went on. No exchange of thought. Hello? What? I mean, it gets you nowhere, particularly if the other person's tail is only just in sight for the second half of the conversation.
It's your fault, Eeyore. You've never been to see any of us. You just stay here in this one corner of the forest, waiting for others to come to you. Why don't you go to them sometimes? Eeyore was silent for a little while, thinking.
There may be something in what you say, Rabbit, he said at last. I have been neglecting you. I must move about more. I must come and go.
That's right, Eeyore. Drop in on any of us at any time when you feel like it.
Thank you, Rabbit. And if anybody says in a loud voice, bother, it's Eeyore, I can drop out again.
Rabbit stood on one leg for a moment. Well, he said, I must be going. I am rather busy this morning.
Goodbye, said Eeyore.
What? Oh, goodbye. And if you happen to come across a good house for Owl, you must let us know.
I will give my mind to it, said Eeyore.
Rabbit went. Pooh had found Piglet, and they were walking back to the 100-acre wood together. Piglet?
Not Piglet?
Said Pooh a little shyly, after they had walked for some time without saying anything. Yes, Pooh?
Do you remember when I said that a respectful Pooh song might be written about you-know-what?
Did you, Pooh? Said Piglet, getting a little pink round the nose. Oh, yes, I believe you did.
It's been written, said Piglet. It's been written, Piglet.
The pink went slowly up to Piglet's nose to his ears and settled there. Has it, Pooh? He asked huskily. About the time when... Do you really mean written? Do you mean really written?
Yes, Piglet.
The tips of Piglet's ears glowed suddenly, and he tried to say something. Even after he had husked once or twice, nothing came out. So Pooh went on.
There were 7 verses in it.
7? Said Piglet as carelessly as he could. You don't often get 7 verses in a hum, do you, Pooh?
Never, said Pooh. I don't suppose it's ever been heard of before.
Do the others know yet? Said Piglet, stopping for a moment to pick up a stick and throw it away.
No, said Pooh, and I wondered which you would like best, for me to hum it now, or to wait till we find the others and then hum it for all of you.
Piglet thought for a while. I think what I'd like best, Pooh, is I'd like you to hum it to me now, and then to hum it to all of us, because then everybody would hear it, but I could say, oh, yes, Pooh's told me, and pretend not to be listening. So Pooh hummed it to him, all 7 verses, and Piglet said nothing, but just stood and glowed, for never before had anyone sung Ho for Piglet, Piglet, Ho all by himself. When it was over, he wanted to ask for one of the verses over again, but didn't quite like to. It was the verse beginning, "O gallant Piglet," and it seemed to him a very thoughtful way of beginning a piece of poetry. Did I really do all that? He said at last.
Well, said Piglet, in poetry, in a piece of poetry, well, you did it, Piglet, because the poetry says you did, and that's how people know.
Oh, said Piglet, because I thought I did blinch a little, like just at first, and it says, did he blinch? No, that's why.
You only blinched inside, said Pooh, and that's the bravest way for a very small animal not to blinch that there is.
Piglet sighed with happiness and began to think about himself. He was brave. When they got to Owl's old house, they found everybody else there except Eeyore. Christopher Robin was telling them what to do, and Rabbit was telling them again directly afterwards, in case they hadn't heard, and then they were all doing it. They'd got a rope and were pulling Owl's chairs and pictures and things out of his old house so as to be ready to put them out into his new one. Kanga was down below tying the things on and calling out to Owl, "Oh, you won't want this dirty old dishcloth anymore, will you? And what about this carpet? It's all in holes." And Owl was calling back indignantly, "Of course I do. It's just a question of arranging the furniture properly. It isn't a dishcloth, it's my shawl." Every now and then, Roo fell in and came back in the rope with the next article, which flustered Kanga a little because she never knew where to look for him. So she got cross with Owl and said that his house was a disgrace, all damp and dirty, and it was quite time it did tumble down. Look at that horrid bunch of toadstools growing out of the corner there. So Owl looked down, a little surprised because he didn't know about this, and then gave a short, sarcastic laugh and explained that that was his sponge, and that if people didn't know a perfectly ordinary bath sponge when they saw it, well, things were coming to a pretty pass. "Well," said Kanga, and Roo fell in quickly, crying, "I must see Owl's sponge. Oh, there it is. No, there it is. Oh, ow. Oh, now I'm getting confused. Oh, and Roo fell in quickly, crying, "I must see Owl's sponge. Oh, there it is. Oh, Owl isn't a sponge, it's a spudge. Do you know what a spudge is, Owl? It's when your sponge gets all..." And Kanga said, "Roo, dear, very quickly, because that's not the way to talk to anybody who can spell Tuesday." But they were all quite happy when Pooh and Piglet came along, and they stopped working in order to have a little rest and listen to Pooh's new song. So, when they all told Pooh how good it was, and Piglet said carelessly, "It is good, isn't it?" No, why am I think I messed up Piglet's voice. It is good, isn't it? I mean, as a song.
And what about the new house? Asked Pooh. Have you found it, Owl?
Well, he's found a name for it, said Christopher Robin, lazily nibbling at a piece of grass. So now all he wants is the house. I am calling it this. Oh, I missed the line. Calling it this, said Owl importantly, and he showed them what he had been making. It was a square piece of board with the name of the house printed on it. The Wallery. It was at this exciting moment that something came through the trees and bumped into Owl. The board fell to the ground, and Piglet and Roo bent over it eagerly. "Oh, it's you," said Owl crossly. Hello, Eeyore." It's you," said Owl crossly. "Hello, Eeyore," said Rabbit. There you are. Where have you been?" Eeyore took no notice of them.
Good morning, Christopher Robin, he said, brushing away Roo and Piglet and sitting down on the Woolery. Are we alone?
Yes, said Christopher Robin, smiling to himself.
I have been told. The news has worked through to my corner of the forest. The damp bit down on the right which nobody wants, that a certain person is looking for a house. I have found one for him.
Well done, said Rabbit kindly. Eeyore looked round slowly at him, then turned back to Christopher Robin.
We have been joined by something, he said in a loud whisper, but no matter. We can leave it behind. If you will come with me, Christopher Robin, I will show you the house.
Christopher Robin jumped up. Come on, Pooh, he said. Come on, Tigger, cried Roo. Shall we go, Owl? Said Rabbit. Wait a moment, said Owl, picking up his notice board which had just come into sight again. Eeyore waved them back.
Christopher Robin and I are going for a short walk, he said. Not a jostle. If he likes to bring Pooh and Piglet with him, I shall be glad of their company, but one must be able to breathe.
That's all right, said Rabbit, rather glad to be left in charge of something. We'll go on getting the things out. Now then, Tigger, where's that rope? What's the matter, Owl? Owl, who had just discovered that his new address was The Smear, coughed at Eeyore sternly, but said nothing, and Eeyore, with most of the Woolery behind him, marched off with his friends. So, in a little while, they came to the house which Eeyore had found, and just before they came to it, Piglet was nudging Pooh, and Pooh was nudging Piglet. And they were saying, "It is, and it can't be, and it really is," to each other. And when they got there, it really was.
There,
said Eeyore proudly, stopping them outside Piglet's house, and the name on it and everything. Oh, cried Christopher Robin, wondering whether to laugh or what.
Just the house for Owl. Don't you think so, little Piglet?
And then Piglet did a noble thing, and he did it in a sort of dream while he was thinking of all the wonderful words Pooh had hummed about him. Yes, it's just the house for Owl, he said grandly, and I hope he'll be very happy in it. And then he gulped twice because he had been very happy in it himself.
What do you think, Christopher Robin?
Asked Eeyore a little anxiously, feeling something wasn't quite right. Christopher Robin had a question to ask first, when he was wondering how to ask, and he was wondering how to ask it. Well, he said at last, it's a very nice house. And if your own house is blown down, you must go somewhere else, mustn't you, Piglet? What would you do if your house was blown down? Before Piglet could think, Pooh answered for him.
You'd come and live with me,
said Pooh.
Wouldn't you, Piglet?
Piglet squeezed his paw. Thank you, Pooh, he said. I should love to. Wait, is that the end of the story? What? I don't understand what happened. Wait, what? Hmm. Hmm. Oh, I think it was Piglet's house he'd found. Maybe. Maybe that's what they're trying to say. I don't know. I didn't really get that one. I think that's the first one which has been like a direct sequel to a story, direct follow-on. Kind of weird. Yeah, I think the idea of that one was that like that was Piglet's house he gave at the end. He gave it up so that Owl could have a place to live. I see. Okay, that kind of makes sense then. Let's do this then. Yeah, Chapter 10, in which Christopher Robin and Pooh come to an enchanted place, and we leave them there. This is the last story, by the way. Christopher Robin was going away. Nobody knew why he was going. Nobody knew where he was going. Indeed, nobody even knew why he knew that Christopher Robin was going away. But somehow or other, everybody in the forest felt that it was happening at last. Even, smallest of all, a friend and relation of Rabbit's, who thought he had once seen Christopher Robin's foot, but couldn't be quite sure, perhaps, because it was something else. Even S of A told himself. Even S of A told himself that things were going to be different. And late and early, two other friends and relations said, "Well, early," and, "Well, late," to each other in such a hopeless sort of way that it really didn't seem any good waiting for the answer. One day, when he felt that he shouldn't wait any longer, Rabbit brained out a notice, and this is what it said. "Notice a meeting of everybody will meet at the house at Pooh Corner to pass a resolution by order keep to the left signed Rabbit." He had to write this out 2 or 3 times because he could get to excuse me. He could get the resolution to look like what he thought it was going to when he began to spell it. But when at last it was finished, he took it round to everybody and read it out to them, and they all said they would come. Wait, did I read that wrong? Oh, no, I didn't. "Well," said Eeyore that afternoon, and when he saw them all walking up to his house, "This is a surprise. Am I asked too?" Oh, it's in Pooh Corner. I see. Wait, no. Yeah, no. "Don't mind Eeyore," whispered Rabbit to Pooh. "I told him all about it this morning." Everybody said, "How do you do?" to Eeyore, and Eeyore said that he didn't, not to notice, and that they sat down as soon as they were all sitting. Sitting down, Rabbit stood up again. "We all know why we're here," he said, "but I have asked my friend Eeyore—" "That's me," said Eeyore. "Grand." "I have asked him to propose a resolution." And he sat down again. "Now then, Eeyore," he said. "Don't bustle me," said Eeyore, getting up slowly. "Don't now then me." He took a piece of paper from behind his ear and unfolded it. "Nobody knows anything about this," he went on. "This is a surprise." He coughed in an important way and began again. "What nots and etceteras before I begin, or perhaps I should say, before I end. I have a piece of poetry to read to you. Hitherto, a long word meaning... Well, you'll see what it means directly. Hitherto, as I was saying,
All the poetry in the forest has been written by Pooh, a bear with a pleasant manner but a positively startling lack of brain. The poem which I am now about to read to you was written by Eeyore. Oh, myself, in a quiet moment, if somebody will take Roo's bullseye away from him and wake up Owl, we shall be able to enjoy it. I call it Poem. This was it. Christopher Robin is going. At least, I think he is. Where? Nobody knows. But he is going. I mean, he goes. To rhyme with knows. Do we care? To rhyme with where? We do. Very much. I haven't got a rhyme for that is in the second line yet. Bother. Now, I haven't got a rhyme for bother. Bother. Those two bothers will have to rhyme with each other. Bother. The fact is, this is more difficult than I thought. I ought, very good indeed, I ought, to begin again, but it is easier to stop. Christopher Robin, goodbye. I, and all your friends, all your friend, send. Very awkward this, it keeps going wrong. Well, anyhow, we send our love. End. If anybody wants to clap, said Eeyore when he had read this, now is the time to do it. They all clapped. Thank you, said Eeyore. Unexpected and gratifying, if a little lacking in smack. Oh, it's much better than mine, said Pooh admiringly, and he really thought it was. Well, explained Eeyore modestly, it was meant to be.
The resolution, said Rabbit, is that we all sign it and take it to Christopher Robin. So it was signed Pooh, Wall, Piglet, Eeyore, Rabbit, Kanga, Blot, Smudge, and they all went off to Christopher Robin's house with it. Hello, everybody, said Christopher Robin. Oh, hello, Pooh. They all said hello and felt awkward and unhappy suddenly, because it was a sort of goodbye they were saying, and they didn't want to think about it. So they stood around and waited for somebody else to speak. And they nudged each other and said, go on, and gradually Eeyore, which was nudged to the front, and the others crowded behind him. What is it, Eeyore? Asked Christopher Robin. Eeyore swished his tail from side to side so as to encourage himself and began.
Christopher Robin, he said, we've come to say, to give you, it's called, written by, we've all, because we've heard, I mean, we all know, well, you see, it's, that, to put it as shortly as possible, is what it is. He turned round angrily on the others and said, everybody crowds round, so in this forest there's no space. I never saw a more spreading lot of animals in my life, and all in the wrong places. Can't you see that Christopher Robin wants to be alone? I'm going. And he humped off. Not quite knowing why, the others began edging away, and when Christopher Robin had finished reading the poem and was looking up to say thank you, only Pooh was left. It's a comforting sort of thing to have, said Christopher Robin, folding up the paper.
and putting it in his pocket. Come on, Pooh. And he walked off, quickly.
Where are we going?
Said Pooh, hurrying after him, and wondering whether it was to be an explore or a what shall I do about you now, about you know what. Nowhere, said Christopher Robin. So they began going there, and after they had walked a little way, Christopher Robin said, "What do you like doing best in the world, Pooh?"
Well,
said Pooh,
what I like best.
and then he had to stop and think. Because although eating honey was a very good thing to do, there was a moment just before you begin to eat it which was better than when you were, but he didn't know what it was called. And then he thought that being with Christopher Robin was a very good thing to do, and having Piglet near was a very friendly thing to have. And so, when he had thought it all out, he said,
What I like best in the whole world is me and Piglet going to see you, and you saying,
"What about a little something?"
and me saying, Well, I shouldn't mind a little something, should you, Piglet,
and it being a hummy sort of day outside, and birds singing. I like that too, said Christopher Robin. But what I like doing best is nothing.
How do you do nothing?
Asked Pooh, after he had wondered for a long time. Well, it's when people call out at you just as you're going off to do it.
What are you going to do, Christopher Robin?
And you say, "Oh, nothing," and then you go and do it.
Oh, I see,
said Pooh. This is a nothing sort of thing that we're doing now.
Oh, I see,
said Pooh again. It means just going along, listening to all the things you can't hear, and not bothering.
Oh,
said Pooh. They walked on, thinking this and that, and by they came to an enchanted place on the very top of the forest called Galleon's Lap, which is 60-something trees in a circle, and Christopher Robin knew it was enchanted because nobody had ever been able to count whether it was 63 or 64, not even when he tied a piece of string on each tree after he had counted it. Being enchanted, its floor was not like the floor of the forest, because gorse and bracken and heather, but close-set grass, quiet and smooth and green. It was the only place in the forest where you could sit down carelessly, without getting up again almost at once and looking for somewhere else. Sitting there, they could see the whole world spread out until it reached the sky. And whatever there was, all the world over, was with them, in Galleon's Lap. Suddenly, Christopher Robin began to tell Pooh about some of the things. People called kings and queens, and something called factors, and a place called Europe, and an island in the middle of the sea where no ships came, and how you make a suction pump if you want to, and when knights were knighted, and what comes from Brazil. And Pooh, his back against one of the 60-something trees, and his paws folded in front of him, said, "Oh," and "I don't know," and thought how wonderful it would be to have a real brain which could tell you things. And by, Christopher Robin came to an end of the things and was silent. And he sat there, looking out over the world, and wishing it wouldn't stop. But Pooh was thinking too, and he said suddenly to Christopher Robin,
"Is it a very grand thing to be an afternoon? What you said?"
"A what?" said Christopher Robin lazily as he listened to something else.
"On a horse,"
explained Pooh. "A knight?"
"Oh, was that it?" said Pooh. "I thought it was Is it as grand as a king and factors and all the other things you said?"
"Well, it's not as grand as a king," said Christopher Robin. And then, as Pooh seemed disappointed, he added quickly, "But it's grander than factors."
"Could a bear be one?"
"Of course he could," said Christopher Robin. "I'll make you one." And he took a stick and touched Pooh on the shoulder and said, "Rise, Sir Pooh de Bear, most faithful of all my knights." So Pooh rose and sat down and said, "Thank you," which is the proper thing to say when you have been made a knight. And he went into a dream again, in which he and Sir Pump and Sir Brazil and Factors lived together with a horse and were faithful knights, all except Factors, who looked after the horse, to good King Christopher Robin. And every now and then he shook his head and said to himself,
"I'm not getting it right."
And then he began to think of all the things Christopher Robin would want to tell him when he came back from wherever he was going, and how muddling it would be for a bear of very little brain to try and get them right in his mind.
"So perhaps," he sadly said to himself, "Christopher Robin won't tell me any more."
And he wondered if being a faithful knight meant that you just went on being faithful without being told things. And suddenly, again, Christopher Robin, who was still looking at the world with his chin in his hands, called out, "Pooh!"
"Yes," said Pooh.
Pooh,
"Yes, Christopher Robin?"
I'm not going to do nothing anymore."
"Never again?"
"Well, not so much. They don't let you." Pooh waited for him to go on, but he was silent again.
"Yes, Christopher Robin?"
said Pooh helpfully. "Pooh, when I'm not doing nothing, will you come up here sometimes?"
"Just me?"
"Yes, Pooh."
"Will you be here too?"
"Yes, Pooh. I will be, really. I promise. I will be, Pooh."
"That's good,"
said Pooh. "Pooh, promise you won't forget about me, ever? Not even when I'm 100? Pooh thought for a little.
"How old shall I be then?"
99. Pooh nodded.
"I promise,"
he said. Still with his eyes on the world, Christopher Robin put out a hand and felt it for Pooh's paw. "Pooh," said Christopher Robin earnestly, if I'm not quite..." He stopped and tried again. "Pooh, whatever happens, you will understand, won't you?"
"Understand what?"
"Oh, nothing. He laughed and jumped to his feet. Come on. Where? Said Pooh. Anywhere, said Christopher Robin. So they went off together. But wherever they go, and whatever happens to them on the way, in that enchanted place on top of the forest, a little bear and his boy. A little boy and his bear will always be playing. And that is the end of Winnie the Pooh. What a sad ending, but a kind of happy ending as well. It's a bittersweet ending. I didn't expect that. Mic not working then? Oh, I think my mic got unplugged. I hope it was being picked up for a while. Well, yeah, it was in this other version I had, there was just a word for Christopher Robin Milne. Christopher Robin's full name. and the son of the author, A.A. Milne. Yeah. Right. You know, I kind of want to just rest on that ending. So I am going to be calling the stream here tonight. Just having a little rest. Thank you very much for streaming. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I do hope you had a relaxing time. And I shall see you again soon. Yeah. Have a good night, everyone. Keep well and stay safe. Bye. Bye.